So welcome everybody again to this webinar that's been organized by CIPIM. We're really happy, Harry and I, that you were able to join us today. Thank you also to Jonathan, our IT guru, who will support us throughout the webinar. So today we're going to talk about monitoring, and more specifically, the role to be adopted within the monitoring process. Should this role be more modeled around the role of the police or more around that one of a personal trainer? We hope that through our discussion, we'll be able to identify why monitoring is not always successful. We also want to explore how the relationship between the person or the unit responsible for monitoring and the program and the project being monitored can be improved. Through the webinar, you're going to be invited to intervene. As Jonathan has said, you're going to be able to use either the chat box or raise your virtual hand. Harry and I, we believe that it's through the exchange of ideas and the hearing what you have lived in terms of experiences that we learn more. So thank you in advance for sharing your ideas, your opinion, and your experiences. So without further ado, I think we're going to start with the webinar plan. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about, like I said, the definition, first of all, of monitoring, the purpose and the role. Then we're going to differentiate between police and personal trainer. We're going to talk about the reasons why the role of monitoring is more focused, oftentimes, on the role of the police. And then we're going to have an opportunity to exchange about story experiences. And finally, at the end, we're going to go over a synthesis of what has been covered today. So don't wait to intervene that we're asking you to do that. You can do that throughout the whole seminar. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the term monitoring. So what is it and why is it important? So monitoring can be defined as the act of following up on the progress achieved against set targets. So why is that important? Well, we want to check to ensure that our actions, our decisions are allowing us to achieve our objectives, whether we're talking about financial objectives or productivity and so on and so forth. So all of this is with the aim of allowing us to correct the situation. So when you monitor, you actually have an opportunity to redress the situation, to introduce adjustments when necessary, so that you can, in fact, achieve those objectives. So often we talk about monitoring and evaluation. It seems like those two are always tagged together, but they're two different concepts. Monitoring is not equal to evaluation. Monitoring, it's more like the dashboard of your car. You know, when you drive, it tells you how fast you're driving, if you have how much fuel you have left, and so on and so forth. Monitoring is going to be concerned about performance. So we need performance indicators, and thanks to those indicators that have been chosen, we'll be able to measure how well we are doing against those set targets, those specific objectives that we have set for ourselves. So monitoring is carried internally by the organization, by internal staff, and it's done on an ongoing basis. When we talk about evaluation, it's a different ballgame. Evaluation is more like the occasional mechanical check of my car. It's an unbiased assessment of a situation at a very specific point in time. So it's not on an ongoing basis. It's really set either, you know, often we see it at the middle of a project and at the end of a project, for example. The evaluation is going to look at what was expected in terms of results and what was achieved. So usually, because it's unbiased, it's conducted by people outside of the organization. And what do we want to evaluate? Well, we can look at different aspects. Pretty much everything can be evaluated. So we're going to look at, for example, the way a project or a program was designed, how it was implemented, and also what the results were. What are the results that were observed? So do you have any questions about these two terms before we actually continue? I lost my chat box. Okay, so thank you. And Harry, over to you for some of your other insights.
Okay, it seems there was no question. So yes, then I think you have explained very well that monitoring is something for self-management. It's a permanent activity, an ongoing activity that helps you actually to work better and to conform to your agreed performance standards. However, very often I think we have to understand, even though it's self-management, it doesn't mean you do it always yourself. It means maybe your accounting department or some other departments are monitoring the processes, how you and how other work in your project or in your institution. And what this very often means is that there are reports written and they may reveal things that you don't like. So monitoring is still, even though if it's self-management, it's a scary issue. Because I think nobody really likes that things are revealed that you're not aware of. And let's just go to our definition of police. Most people don't like to be monitored because they don't know what's the purpose of it. And I just think of all these data protection that we talk about permanently for years and years. We try to avoid that our personal knowledge or our personal behavior is revealed to other sources that may abuse it or may use it in a way we do not agree to. So in a way, even though monitoring is a very helpful activity, we don't like it too much, isn't it? And why is this so? I think we monitor normally this is at least one reason for monitoring. We monitor for accountability, isn't it? Everybody in an institution, in a project is accountable for something. And normally we have agreed performance targets. So these targets will be checked on. Unfortunately, I have to say, these targets then, or the information then, is very often used for blaming purposes. So it is not just for communication of variation and variances. No, it is really to pinpoint people. And this is what we consider a police or a policeman. And well, this is a situation that people very often don't feel very comfortable with. However, when we talk about personal trainer, I rather talk about, or we rather define it as assisting somebody, supporting, bringing the best out of people, hopefully, isn't it? And then you see the second function of monitoring comes in very, very strong, I feel. It is to create new and better information in order to feed into better work and better decision-making. And this direction or this purpose of monitoring, we consider somehow as a personal trainer function. So now the question is, what do you rather like? Do you rather like a personal trainer or a policeman? And let's just do a small check on this with the participants too. But maybe I start, you see here this 2x2 matrix. It is just a question, why do I like to cooperate with police? Why don't I? And why do I like to work with a personal trainer and why don't I? And for instance, I recently had a personal trainer who bossed me around. I felt like in military. So this guy was supposed to support me. So if somebody is not considering my needs and bossing me around, Can you read this? Yes, I
Yeah,
hope so.
that's good.
Well, I'm sorry for this, but you see it about, then I don't even like a personal trainer. I mean, is there something else that let's contribute in a group way to this?
Well, I'll add something then, Harry. I like to cooperate with the police when I'm seeking clarification around the laws
Okay.
and the rules to be observed.
Information and rules, you said?
Yeah, the rules or the laws.
Okay, rules. Okay, I think that's clear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we have a participant here that's writing to cooperate with a personal trainer when he or she wants to learn how to do something. So with a personal trainer or to improve a performance.
If you want to learn and you need support, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Right. I think that's very important. Yes.
Anything else?
And why don't I like to cooperate with police?
Here, because they don't here it says they don't understand our position, our point of view.
Okay.
So
yes.
So
if they
don't make an effort to understand our point of view, our position.
Yes. Or they don't even care.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes.
And now you see, this reminds me of a movie, a very old movie. It's called The Fugitive, which is a movie where Harrison Ford is an person accused of murder, and the policeman pursues him. And finally, the policeman catches him and points the gun at him. And the fugitive, so Harrison Ford says, "I'm innocent. I didn't kill my wife." And the policeman says, "I don't care." And the policeman is right somehow, because he is the law, the reinforcer. He is not the person judging innocence and not, isn't it? But now I forgot to write, if they don't understand my needs or my position. Okay, yes. I'm sorry. I wanted to share the story. My position and my needs. Yes.
And somebody else wrote here, also like to cooperate with the police when I need protection.
Oh yeah, very important. I think this is actually a very important function. Protection.
So we trust.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Protection,
anything else, everybody? Seems like that's it.
Okay.
That's good. We can see a difference.
Okay, maybe, okay, so maybe just to summarize, I think we like to cooperate, whether police or personal trainer, if we feel understood, if somebody listens to us, and if this person can help us, isn't it? Could this be somewhat a summary?
Yeah.
And yes, and we don't like to cooperate with people who ignore our needs, who don't listen, and who finally, I don't know, play bosses. Okay. Yeah. Then we thought, and this is to share with you, we thought a long time, and we had a lot of discussions to think about, why do so many people in monitoring roles actually behave like police, and rather in this non-supportive way. And well, we came up with 5 reasons, and you see, we wrote stereotype. It's a generalization, But a lot of these monitoring persons or roles are executed in a policeman way. And let's just see, I have to say we found these 5 reasons, and you see these 5 reasons are deeply interconnected. So I don't even know where to start really, but let's start with the rule orientation. We all live according to rules, isn't it? And rules are very necessary because rules allow us not to think every time through a chain what may happen. We just behave a certain way because we learned it and it worked in the past. And I think it is very important. For instance, I'm sitting here in Dubai and want to buy things, and here you have to negotiate. Canadians are not used to negotiation. So, well, maybe to negotiation, not for bargaining. And then somebody told me, well, this is very simple. You ask the price, you cut it by 2, and then you add a little bit. Yeah, and the first thing I did this and it didn't work. So rules do not always work, and rules are somewhat seen as a shortcut, but as insensitive. So a lot of monitoring people apply rules, and since they have a power position, and what do I mean with power position? It means somehow monitoring is very often closer to top management than you are. Monitoring writes reports, and that gives them a certain power and a certain ear to your superiors. And sometimes you don't even know about it. So they, in itself, has an inherent power position. And very often monitoring is subject to silo thinking. And you know what silo thinking is? Everybody claims it is terrible, but we do it all the time. We think in departments, we think in functions. We think I'm the monitoring person and you're the person who executes, you're the project manager and you're the accountant. We think by professions very often. And very often then we forget that we have the same goals. We are the monitoring person as well as the executing people. They are there to reach an objective. And silo thinking sometimes can really separate the common goal in small individual parts that are pursued without looking for the synergy, without looking for the common benefit. And these 3, this trinity then combined with a blaming culture. That means if you're, and I think, well, maybe I'm a typical blamer. It is so easy to pinpoint, isn't it? Well, it's the other one, there's their problem, and so on. And very often, then when we combine this with people only looking for the past, they try not to understand what does it mean that happens and how do we remediate it. They think, who is responsible for what happened wrong in the past? This combination of these 5 factors is actually quite detrimental for a positive work environment. So this is what we think. And since we want to share, and I know it's sometimes very difficult to start sharing, I want to start telling you my experience I had as a young engineer. And it is something really funny because I worked as an internal auditor. And an internal audit, why do we do internal audit? It is actually, the idea is to help people to prepare for an external audit. So prepare them to look prepared. So I was there and really optimistic to help people to do better. And in a lot of departments, I was seen as an enemy. So actually, the funny thing is, I, as a person monitoring, was very willing to cooperate, to be the personal trainer. but the people didn't wanted me to be a personal trainer. They saw me as an intruder, something who puts his nose into their stuff, and they didn't understand my function. So what I try to say with this, it is not always the monitoring that creates a hostile environment. It may be past experiences or the other side. So Maria, is there some comment from somebody? If not, you please tell us a story.
I will, but I would like to take this opportunity to invite everybody to write down a few words about a story or an experience that you would like to share with us. And we can read it, or you can raise your hand and talk about it as well. But in the meantime, while you're thinking about that, I can talk to you about some of the experiences that I have. So during my career, I've set up a lot of monitoring systems. And in the early days, I really wanted to do things the right way. And I developed dashboards that would allow me to monitor just about everything. Of course, every little detail of the project, because I didn't want to miss any information. So I was just collecting information in case I actually needed it. And so we developed some dashboard. In one of those situations, my boss asked me to develop a dashboard that would not only capture the information about where we stood in terms of financials or deadlines or specific targets that we had to improve our performance, but he also wanted me to capture the information about who was using the dashboard, which ones of his managers were actually using the information and looking at the dashboard and so on and so forth. And so at one point in time in that project, the activities went off the rails, of course, as it happens often in projects. And the first reaction from my boss was, I want to know who's using the dashboard and who's not. And so I gave him the information. I can tell you I didn't make any friends on that project. So I had to give him the information because we had been collecting it. And he started blaming, as you said, Harry, previously, the blame culture. So he started blaming the managers that were not using the dashboard for the project going off risk. And so that didn't go well with my colleagues at all. And when I look back into that situation, and I did learn from that. So that's always the important thing, right? When you do something, even if you're not successful, at least if you learn from it, it's a positive thing. It's a positive experience. So in retrospect, I understood that I had made some mistakes that could have avoided the whole thing. So first of all, I should have consulted not only with my boss, who was telling me what he wanted to see in the dashboard, but also with my colleagues to make sure that the information that I was collecting was actually something that they needed for their monitoring. Because if they didn't use the dashboard, maybe it was because the dashboard was not answering some of their questions, some of their requirements. And so what's the point of looking at something that has like 40 indicators if none of them are actually good for you? So I learned that. I also learned that I should have involved people in the development of the objectives themselves and of the targets. And especially, how do we interpret the results? You know, with dashboards, you have the green, the yellow, and the red. But who's to say when something is green or yellow or red? Is it, you know, me that's sitting outside of the project, but really just helping the manager, the boss with the management of the targets? Or is it more the people that are actually involved in the process that have a better appreciation for what should be considered a low risk, a medium risk, or a high risk situation? So really, the fact that I didn't communicate that well, the fact that I didn't involve or seek the participation of my colleagues made it into a situation where actually nobody saw any use for the monitoring.
Yeah.
They didn't understand it, and so they didn't want to use the tool that we had prepared. So really, the monitoring was more for my boss, the report for my boss, but didn't really help the situation when he started blaming. So that's my experience. Any other ideas, experiences that people want to share? Okay, so we move on.
Okay, so we have not very active people today.
No,
okay, because
well, we have in the first part.
Actually, I have a lot of stories, and maybe we come to this later if we have some time still to share. What we think that is important, because the monitoring role is a role that checks for accountability, no, for performance achieved and so on. But I think you rightfully indicated that the performance must be agreed upon by everybody. It needs a commitment from the person. It cannot just be that your boss tells everybody what they have to do. I mean, this is an old position that was maybe feasible years ago, or based on authority. So we think, and following of Paracelsus, which is I don't even know when this fellow lived, but he was a doctor and said, the dose makes the poison. So yes, you have to be sometimes the police. But I guess we suggest you should rather be a personal trainer. And you see, a lot of these monitoring people I know, they insist so much on numbers. But somehow they should insist too on stories. And it's actually you, Muriel, who told me years ago, and I remember this right now, make numbers speak. Numbers should tell you a story. So if the monitoring person is not interested in the story, they do not do their job. And this is what we maybe consider as a personal trainer. So let's just try with our participants to listen to some stories, or maybe they have some tips or some advice how we can create a constructive relationship between the monitoree and the monitorer that resembles a cooperation and a position of a personal trainer. So please, participants, if you have some trick or something you think is very important to emphasize in order to create a personal trainer relationship, please tell us.
We have one here. It says, seek cooperation and collaboration from all.
Yes, this is a very general, isn't it?
Yeah.
Collaboration.
But we forget that we get so involved in, the development of the tool and using the tool that, we do all of this on our own as opposed to involving everybody. So that's that silo effect that we're talking about. And
yes,
here what we're saying needs to be more global than that. Do you have one, Harry, that you want to put?
well, you see, for me, it is always very difficult, and even in my personal life, it's very difficult to tell the truth that maybe hurts without inferring that the person made a mistake. You understand? In fact, just present the facts without blame. You have to practice this a lot, and I think I have to practice this a lot. But it's clear if you already come as a monitoring person, so I would say try not to blame, or tell the story without blaming. Yeah. This is what monitoring is about, isn't it? and it is very difficult to do. So
I have another one.
Okay, okay, I'm sorry. No, it's fine.
Okay, it says here, set clear goals and objectives of the monitoring visit and share with the project field staff before embarking on the trip. So really, it's communicate the goals, like why we're doing the monitoring, and share this with the project staff.
Yes,
that's a really good one.
And communicate.
Yeah, because often that's what's going to happen, right? The monitoring staff is going to be perceived as auditors. And we all know that when we hear the word audit, we get scared. A little bit like in your story where you were in internal audit. So this is the same thing, right? We have a negative perception as soon as we see these people arriving in our workplace. We go, oh no, here we go again, type of thing. What are they going to find this time, and who are they going to blame for it? And so I think it needs to be clear objectives and shared, communicative, so that the monitoring actually is a little bit more welcome in the workplace. Anything else?
Yes. I would say, just when we talk, well, I have a lot of ideas. Maybe I should fill this up myself. Create a relationship of trust. It fits to all this, you see. Because sure, if you just go into a department when you monitor, they don't know you. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to write first. Relationship of trust. You should be seen as a colleague. You should be known. They should know that you're not the dangerous person that tries to advance your own career on the detriment of others. They should know what you do, and you should know what they do. And actually, this is something, probably a little bit of informal relationships help a lot. Yes. So what else?
Anything else, participants? Any ideas, things you want to share? Let's wait a few minutes, a few seconds.
I would just add, sorry, the last one I have, that is there something?
Ask questions. Like don't feel that you can't ask questions on both sides. I mean, the monitors normally ask a lot of questions, but I think that the people or the units being monitored can also ask questions to clarify what is required, or what are the objectives, a little bit like what the other participants said.
Yes.
So
both sides.
Questions. Both sides. It's a two-way communication, right? So
yes.
So a lot of this has to do with communicating.
Yes, I think, and the appearance, how you appear, if you appear as an intruder, well, sure, it will not work. But very often, if you're curious, people are glad to explain things. And I think ask questions is very important, yes. So how do we do with time?
I think we're doing fine. We can go to the next slide.
Okay, very good. So we did this question, we collected your suggestions, because there are hundreds of different ways we think there are to improve a relationship or create like a trust between monitorer and monitoree. However, we came up with some basic issues that really need to be addressed. And one which is really clear, and I think we mentioned it already several times, favor system thinking. What is system? Everybody knows what silo thinking is. Silo thinking is you and I, and we are separated, isn't it? But system thinking is we both are part of a system, and we serve the purpose of the system, which means people say we sit in the same boat, isn't it? That's it. System thinking is we are doing the best we can to get the boat advancing. And system thinking helps because it reduces blaming too. System thinking, you see, it's like a couple has a fight. It's never ever the problem of one. Now we have the Russians and the Americans that start again wars and so on, or threats. It is not the mistake of one. It is the combination of both. So system thinking, I think, is a very important issue. And then something comes in that probably I have to explain. Psychologists call this a fundamental attribution error. And this is an error. It is fundamental. Every human is doing this. We attribute to the other person very often some value criteria and to ourselves personal criteria. So I have to explain what this means. It means my colleague is late. Then I say, oh, my colleague is unreliable. But when I'm late, I say, sorry, I missed the train. So I find a personal reason, but the others have, I doubt in their morals and their attitudes. We use this all the time. And I don't know whether you, well, I do it very often too. When I lose something, first I ask my wife, where did you put those things? Instead of thinking that maybe I lost it, I put it somewhere. So we always attribute failure first, and very often big failures, to others before we think of ourselves. And an institution must be aware of this. If you know that you do it, you can maybe not eliminate it, but you can reduce it. And sure, think about the role of both, and maybe that the other person has the same reasons that you have. And I think it facilitates communication. The third one for me is focus on the future. Don't think what went wrong. Think rather, what can I learn from what went wrong? How can we remediate it? How can we avoid that this happens again? And so on. So monitoring is not a past-oriented activity. Monitoring is something where you use the past to improve your performance in the future. And I think these three issues, they really relate to the institution too, to the culture and to the monitor and the monitoree. We found an advice for the monitorer that they should rather rely on their expert power than on their position power. Expert power is you have tools at hand to help people. You know how to suggest solutions, to facilitate decision-making and so on. So then you become rather, well, a personal trainer or a doctor. And another advice we found that is for the monitoree: don't think because you made a mistake, you're a bad person. You see, very often we can become so defensive when somebody starts attacking us that we really become aggressive and we create this hostile environment. Everybody makes mistakes, and that's, well, not too many, hopefully, but it is normal. And we don't become a bad person because we make some mistakes. So very often, if somebody tells us the truth, don't become defensive. Think first, does it apply or not? And then become defensive if you think it's wrong, isn't it? So these are general practices that we found, for instance.
Yeah, and Harry, I think that got somebody else thinking, because we have another input from a participant, and I think it goes back. Well, yeah, if you want to. Okay. It says, share your field findings with the project staff in a plenary session and get their input before you finalize your monitoring report. So seek input from the monitoring before finalizing your report.
Before reporting.
And in a plenary session, before you finalize your report. So that, you know, you can maybe, as you said before, the context is important. Numbers are just numbers. So it's the whole context that's important. And so when if you present your findings and you give the staff an opportunity to comment on what your findings are, maybe there's some nuances that need to be captured in your report that you have missed because you're not there on a day-to-day. You're looking at the numbers and what they're telling you in terms of trends and so on and so forth. I think that's a really very good point. Yeah.
Yes, I think too, because you have to show people that the information you collect is not a weapon.
Exactly.
And you give them a chance to explain and to justify, because maybe there is a good reason that they don't do things or they did things that were not planned. And very often it's the environment too. Don't forget it. It is not even therefore. Things change in the environment. Very good.
So we've got our slide.
We got silo system thinking. So think as a unit. Avoid to assign characteristics or traits to people if it's maybe just a small issue. Orient your monitoring towards the future to problem solving and so on. Become a colleague and become the wise person that helps other people, isn't it? And for the monetary, don't be too sensitive. If this is a truth, don't try to defend yourself if it's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So wow. Hey, Harry, we're almost done here.
Yes,
so
we came to the end.
Has worked well, and we had some good exchange of points. I think that really made the webinar very interesting. So folks, we hope that you enjoyed the discussion as much as we did. And so, sorry, Harry, I cut you off there. So you can go ahead. We're not finished. We're almost finished.
No, we are always finished. Please, just go ahead.
Go ahead.
Really.
Go ahead. But I just thought that we had a lot of good exchanges, and we really hope that we're going to be able to discuss further on monitoring and other seminars soon. Over to you.
And this gives me the chance to do some promotion for CITIM. For those who are not very familiar with CITIM, I just want to present our institution a bit. So CITIM is a training provider, but our provider of technical assistance for, let's say, for development projects. And we specialized in five domains, so project management, public procurement, so general management, public governance, and sustainable development. And if we do training, normally we do it in our centers. So we have a center in Montreal, Kuala Lumpur, and the very new one in Istanbul. But mind you, and maybe not too people know this, that we can come to your site and train a specific group. So you can decide the location. And if you have like 5, 10, 15 people, then we can train them on very specific issues, and it becomes a rather customized training. So I invite you, I invite you to be curious, and please use our webpage, so citim.com, in order to understand more. So now, thank you. Thank you, Muriel. Thank you, Jonathan, for your participation. And
thank you, everybody.
Hope to see you soon, one day in person, hopefully when this COVID thing is over. Exactly. We would like to meet you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.